Now, China is opening its market to Africa on a scale the continent has never seen before. From May the 1st, Beijing will officially scrap tariffs on all products from 53 African countries. In simple terms, nearly the entire continent will get duty-free access to the world's second-largest economy. The directive was announced in a message from Chinese President Xi Jinping to leaders gathered at the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa.
Starting May 1st, 2026, China will fully implement zero-tariff treatment for 100% of tariff lines for 53 African countries with which it has diplomatic relations. This historic move is not merely a trade policy, it is a strategic bridge that will provide new opportunities for African development and help us create a high-level China-Africa community with a shared future.
Before this, China had already granted duty-free access to 33 African countries. The new policy now extends that system to almost the entire continent. But there is one exception, excluded from the All-Africa deal. Reports confirm that Eswatini is the only country left out. Analysts say the reason is strictly diplomatic. Eswatini maintains ties with Taiwan, which Beijing claims as its territory. Analysts say the exclusion sends a clear signal that trade access follows political recognition. The announcement also comes at a moment of global trade uncertainty. The United States recently extended the African Growth and Opportunity Act only until the end of 2026. African business say the short extension makes long-term planning difficult. Now, African countries are also still locked in complex trade negotiations with the European Union, with governments worried that cheap imports could hurt local industries. Leaders across the continent have welcomed Beijing's move, calling it a new chapter in China-Africa relations.
This is the most exciting announcement that Africa could receive at this particular time when we're at the AU. You will be aware that the United States of America removed AGOA, which was something which was a cornerstone of Africa's export to the United States of America. But this is more than a replacement of AGOA.
I do believe that these kind of initiatives can go a long way, and all countries should really partner to make sure that the barriers to trade are removed.
As things stand, trade between China and Africa is already massive. In the first 8 months of 2025, bilateral trade reportedly reached about $222 billion. But the balance remains uneven. Chinese exports to Africa have surged, and African exports have grown only modestly. Now, Africa mostly sells raw materials: crude oil, copper, cobalt, iron ore, and minerals alone account for about 40% of China's imports from Africa's least developed economies. In return, China exports machinery, electronics, and industrial equipment, along with large volumes of renewable energy technology like solar panels. Economists estimate that China may give up about $1.4 billion in tariff revenue under the new policy. Beijing says the goal is to boost African exports and narrow the trade gap. However, this access did not come out of nowhere. African leaders have been pushing for years for greater access to Chinese markets. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa recently held trade talks in Beijing. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has also repeatedly called for action on trade imbalances. But analysts say that zero tariffs do not remove every barrier. Shipping costs from landlocked regions remain high. Meeting Chinese regulatory standards can be difficult for small exporters, and many African countries still lack the industrial base to export finished goods. Now, China says it plans additional financing and trade facilitation support for businesses operating in Africa. And that support is designed to make African goods easier to sell in China. So, Chinese tariffs may soon fall to zero, but the real question is what Africa sells to Chinese markets. If raw minerals go out and finished goods come back, the trade deficit is unlikely to change.
Power doesn't end quietly. Some deaths are not accidents. They are messages. A gunshot. A crowd. A country frozen. The killer disappears. The questions don't. This is not just about who died. It's about what followed. Governments fell. Armies moved. History rewrote itself. 5 leaders. 5 moments. One pattern. The assassination.